Hi, today we're going to look at a couple of features of Agrimodis, assuming you've got some plant tests back to look at, how to make the views easier, and how to do some adjustments based on the data you're getting back. So I'm going to go ahead and go into our sample business to show you some examples of how we see samples and how to work with those. All right, so by now, hopefully you're familiar with the layout of Agrimodis with your field crop years. Your plant test results you've entered will show up here, the lab results, but the model results is what you're looking for. First off, I've had some questions about, hey, this thing is really spread out and hard to use. Can I make it a little bit simpler? Well, we put pretty much everything on here by default for you. Some of these columns you may want to keep, some of them you don't. And also, yeah, it's spread out because we don't know the screen you're using. And when I go to different screens, for instance, a second monitor or projector, things look different. Now on my laptop, I found that if I just go over here to the borders and move about to where that vertical ellipsis is for each column, I can condense all of these down to where it's a lot simpler to see everything all at once. So you can play with those. You can move columns around like I accidentally just did. So you can change all those, but once you get it the way you want it, go up here to Action to save preferences. And that will, every time you go to the Model Results tab, it will pull up those view preferences. In a way of all the extra columns, if you don't want some of the columns on there, and I'll explain what some of these are, but let's say you know it's your business, you don't want the business name in there. This group ID, you won't really need that until later. You still might not. If you right click on the ellipsis, you can go to columns and you can take, say, business name off of there. You can take the group ID off of there. You can take the dates. You can take event code prefixes or the whole event code. You can just have the prefix on there. So there's different things you can get rid of. Now, the next time, if you don't save your preferences, it'll default back. If you do save your preferences, it'll save your columnar widths, locations, and if you've unchecked any of those. If you want to add them back in later, just undo it by right-clicking the ellipsis, go to columns, and then just adding that event code back in, okay? So just different ways of doing it. You can also sort, like I typically will click and drag grower name followed by field name up, and that way it will organize all of my growers and the fields. So multiple plant tests, multiple model results within a field will just be listed one after the other. Then you can sort by either ascending or descending event date if you'd like. So the newest one is on top or newest one's on bottom. But play with those and remember to save your preferences in case to keep that in there so you don't have to do it over and over again. Okay, a couple of things to show you here. I've got three examples here, two from Bob Barker's farm and one just grower one, field one. I want to give you different use cases of what we've encountered here. So grower one, farm one, field one. We have a plant test event code here. It lists all the sample information. Plant one is what we call that one. That's what we call the event code suffix. You can add that to every sample. And then that goes with the sample ID. So scrolling over, that was a V9 sample. We have it at 30,000 plants per acre with yield goal of 250. At V9, you're showing 288.5 is your yield estimate per bushel on this line. Now for nitrogen pounds per acre, this is 79.9. That's the quantity of nitrogen in that biomass as sampled. If you hover over that, the current value is 79.9. The goal is 71.6, so we're actually high. But the expected range is 56.3 to 86.6. So we're within the expected range for that V9 growth stage at 30,000 plants, 250 bushel yield goal. You see blue on P, that means that is above our range. Current value is 8.9 pounds of P, where the expected range ended at 8.3. So if we get above or below that expected range, that's where you'll trigger reds, and that's where you'll trigger blues highs, red lows. All right, so you see how the nutrient status is here. Now, sometimes you will find, and that's what the other two examples are here that I wanted to show you, that the yield is way higher or way lower than what you expect. So let's look at those scenarios. Let's look at Barker 1, this top line here. And when I scroll over, you see that is a V8 sample. Yield goal is 200, plant population is 30,000, and yield bushel per acre came back 134. Now, that seems really low. So when I look at that, the current value is 35.2. My goal is 45. There's a couple reasons that could be. One, it could truly be that much below yield goal. It's possible, but you would recognize that. You would probably see that in the stressor. We give you an option to do some what ifs here. You notice how everything just looks off. Everything's low. Nitrogen is not low. It's in range, but my goal is 45. So it actually is still technically low versus the actual set yield goal, but it's within range. But my P is low, my K is low, sulfur is low, calcium is low. And as I go over, everything's red. So what that is to me, I'm not going to jump to the conclusion unless there's something visible that you see in the field wrong. What I'm going to do is assume that that hybrid is either not developing as quickly or you've had some slower growth. Some hybrids do accumulate more rapidly in different growth stages than others. So Agrimodis gives you the ability to do some what ifs. Say, okay, it's V8. That's what the target is. That's what Agrimodis is setting all its up against to. What if I back that to V7? So go back over here to the very first thing, click this little check mark, and go to selected record options, modify the Agrimodis growth stage. And while the lab sampled, it showed V8, let's back that up to V7 and do a what if. So if you're on the V7 part of what I expect you to be for that sample, I'm going to scroll over to the right. And where are we here? Let me refresh just to make sure I'm on the right line. Because that was Barker 1. Yeah. That did not take. Let me try that again. It was at V8. I want to make it V7. Save. I either got ahead of it or I didn't enter what I thought I'd entered. Okay, so now it changed to V7, all right? That was still a V8. That's why I went back and did it again. All right, so it says V7. Our yield goal is 200. Well, now look at your yield bushel per acre, 201.9. And when I look at the nutrient levels, everything turned green all of a sudden. It's not necessarily that crop is on track to do that 132 bushels, is that crop is more at a V7 stage of growth than it was V8. Now, it may truly be V8 out in the field, but you've only got, in periods of rapid growth, maybe 3 days there. If you're very, very early V8, well, it's not that much different, very late V7. So being that we're going so quickly between growth stages, you want to have that flexibility of doing some what ifs to get yourself on track. You're not actually behind on all those nutrients. Your dry matter was simply more at that late V7 accumulation than it was the V8 that we were targeting it to. So you'll see your range kind of went a little bit lower. Instead of 45, now my range upper end is 45. So we dropped back a growth stage of expectation. My goal is 32.9. Current value is 35. You're right on target. Calcium is a little low at 2.7. The expected is 3.6. But you see that magnesium is probably, a little bit higher. Well, it's about right. Which you'll see if magnesium is really high, calcium is typically low. If K is really high, calcium could be really low. But neither one of those are the case here. Manganese is low, but iron is most likely what's going to be in the way there. Now, again, we're very early. We're going to give you, if we haven't already turned it on, let me see here. We're going to give you that dry matter soon to be able to see that as a user so you can actually look at that plant development. But from an admin aspect of Agrimodis, we can look at those things and tell you, hey, you might have entered, V8, but your true up against needs to be more to V7 to give you an actual idea of how your nutrient levels are. Now look at the line next one down here. I wanted to give the opposite too, because we see this also. And now I'm not judging how good you are at staging. Now, sometimes somebody can go out there and just disregard that there's been 3, 4, maybe 5 leaves that have sloughed off before you've done the sample. Maybe somebody new that doesn't know how to account for those early leaves. But it might be that your hybrid is just really packing on nutrients way faster than our trend line would expect it to. Again, I don't want you thinking, oh my gosh, I've got 775 bushels an acre out here. David Hula, look out. I want you to use the tool as the tool is designed to be used. It's showing you're 91.4 pounds an acre. That's the goal is 41.1, so you're 50 pounds over. Okay, very unlikely that that's giving you a true nutrient balance if that's really a V7. And sometimes it's way off. So for something that comes in that looks really weird, maybe you're questioning, did the person enter the right stage? Maybe you just accidentally entered V7. Again, do some what ifs. I'm going to take that Bob Barker 2 field. Let's modify the growth stage. And let's say it was V9. Click save. It'll do the math for you. Again, we're on this Barker 2 field. And when I move over, it's still 378.4. So your goal is still 71.6. I bet you I'm still 2 growth stages off of where that ought to be. Even though my boron is showing lower, my zinc is starting to show a deficiency. All right, so now let's fast forward this thing. Because I'm still way off from what you expect that field to be. So let's do some testing. Let's jump another 2 growth stages to V11. Okay, look what happened here. The yield goal was 250. The yield bushels per acre is now 247.1. And let's look at our nutrient status. That 91.4 pounds an acre of nitrogen, that's in range. Your goal is 100.9 with a range of 86.6 to 114.2. That sounds like we're a lot closer. That V10 to V12 is fitting the sample better than what the submitted V7 was. And I don't know why you would have V7 in there, but we've seen it. Okay, it happens. Now, phosphate looks high, or actually this is elemental P. This is not phosphate. So divide this by 0.4364 or multiply it times 2.29 to get your P2O5 equivalent. Just know there's not really such a thing as P2O5. It's kind of a made-up number. But P and K, they're both elemental here. So you are just a little bit over. Your expected range goes to 11. You're at 13, so very growth stage appropriate there. K, the lower end of the range is 113.1. You're at 112.5, so that's only 0.6 pounds off. I'd say the V11 up against, no matter what the crop is at, the V11 up against number is what is suitable for this crop. If you took it from an area that you expect to reach 250 bushels, and it looks good, and you don't see problems, and we're getting 247.1 yield bushel per acre out of the lab result at V11, and this is your nutrient status, this is what I would use. So your boron is a little behind, quite a bit behind. So 0.013, expected range is 0.042. That boron uptake, if you're truly at V10, V11, you're starting the rapid uptake of boron. We're not there yet, so you have plenty of time to still get that boron out there. The manganese iron balance, always keep that in mind. If iron is high, which it is, then manganese likely will be low, and vice versa. Zinc is starting to fall behind. Zinc and boron have very similar uptake curves. So, this is the perfect sample to get ahead of that need of boron and zinc. A deficiency now won't hurt you as bad as a deficiency as you are marching toward tassel rapidly. So that is how you can play with those when you see the yield bushel per acre estimate just way off from expectations and way off from what you see. That's probably why, is that you need to do a little playing. Let's do some what ifs, get the trend line adjusted to what you're seeing and what your plant mass is. Again, we'll get that dry matter added where you guys can see that. And you'll have some targets there also. Now, one other tool you can use with this, especially for anybody doing applications prior to tassel, and you want to know, okay, what do I have coming up? You can do the same thing with a gap analysis. Okay, so the gap analysis, when I switch over to that, I'm going to hit refresh just to make sure all my math is fresh. When I look at Barker 1 and Barker 2 as my top 2 fields, what the gap will do is tell me what the gap is in how the model is set right now. So I'm going to use that V7 and V11 on those 2 samples and the V9 down here. What is the actual gap? So you see my nitrogen is ahead here. It's a little behind here, even though it's on target. Okay, don't let that confuse you. It is negative 9.5 pounds, but it is on target. You're not below the expected range for the stage we have it set. So that's how it is currently, like V7 to V7, V11 to V11, okay? But if I go back into the model result, And let's just do it on one. Let's do it in his grower one, field one. Okay, so in the gap analysis, if I go to grower one, field one, it's the bottom line here. You will see, for instance, zinc is negative 0.026 pounds an acre. Now that's at the stage it was tested. You're negative 0.026. Here's how you can play with that. If I go back to the model tab and I go back to grower one, field one, and I change the growth stage to VT or R6. All right, we can do that next. And I hit save. Go back to that gap analysis. Go back to your zinc. And see it's still negative 0.026 because I have to hit refresh and get the math to carry over. Now I'm negative 0.252 pounds an acre. That's why somebody might be saying, add that quart of zinc into a side dress, or, put a pint or a quart of zinc in with the fungicide application, because that need ramps up so much. So even though you're negative now by only a small margin, like 0.03 pounds, that quarter pound is what you will be short by tassel without anything else getting to that crop. Then if I want to further that exploration and I want to say, okay, I've currently got it set at VT, that Agrimodis growth stage is VT. How much more will I need by maturity? And then go to R6. And actually, peak uptake of zinc is closer to R5.5, so we'll choose it. Hit save. Go back to gap analysis. I'm just going to go ahead and hit refresh because you see how that works of getting that math transferred over. Now 0.516 pounds, over half a pound of zinc, is from where you are currently at the sample you're sitting at to maturity. That crop needs to take up another half pound of zinc. Now, if you want to credit so much from the soil during that period, that would be a smart thing to do, but you're going to have to figure out what is your crop actually getting. Now, by the time you get to the end of the year with your plant sampling with Agrimodis, you can help answer some of those questions because you'll be able to see how much zinc it got. And maybe you have a place where you applied none. So any zinc uptake is what came from the soil. You can get an idea of soil contribution. But you can play with those what ifs, what do I needs? So we had that at V9. Don't forget, when you get back, there's not a reset button. You have to reset it. So that's why we give you both the Agrimodis growth stage and the lab growth stage of V9. So I'm going to change that one back to V9. That way, when I look at it next time, I'm not trying to figure out why it looks like I am low on everything, right? So now it should be back to normal. Yeah, 288.5 bushel yield expectation. Everything's back to reading the way it should. And that small amount of zinc is still showing. When I go to gap, I hit refresh, I should be back to that negative 0.026 pounds of zinc, which I am, okay? So that's your current need based on when it was sampled, the gap. But do some playing. You can get the yield goal to where it falls in line better with what you are seeing if there's a large discrepancy there. And I'll warn you, if you get back V7 to V6 to V5, there's such rapid change in the accumulated dry matter during those times that your yields are going to look crazy anyway. But as you get closer within stages, what's V10, what's V11, what's V12, it's hard physically to match that to the plant density sometimes. So we allow you to make those adjustments. It's a really powerful tool for you to really judge not only your nutrient status now, but your upcoming needs as well. All right, feel free to get in touch with agronomy at agrimodis.com or info@agrimodis.com for additional questions. All right, thanks for watching.